Price ceiling is the maximum price a seller can legally charge a buyer for a good or service. Usually, regulators set these price ceilings. There are four typical tenets of price ceiling. The regulator, such as a local government, establishes the maximum acceptable prices for the service. The regulated company can sell its services at any price that is equal to or below the ceiling. The regulator may group services into baskets and set an overall price ceiling for them, or it might set a ceiling for each individual service. The regulator may adjust a ceiling based on changes in industry, prices, or productivity. The regulator may also periodically review the price cap system. It may change the ceiling formula or review the profit conditions of a firm. We will use the example of a rent control to illustrate this topic. Rent control can be defined as legally imposed below market rates for renting a house. This occurs when the government decides to intervene and tells a landlord he or she can only charge at or below the government mandates. There are some negative effects when this happens, however. For example, a shortage of rental units arises as landlords become less interested in renting at below market rates. Not only do landlords become less interested in renting out these units, they also do not prioritize the maintenance and upkeep of them once they have been rented out. This leads to a deterioration of care and standard of living in these apartments. On the other hand, when people find out that some apartments are rent-controlled, they jump on it right away. This creates a shortage of rent-controlled apartments and an excess of people that want to rent them. However, a New York Times study done on New York's housing situation sheds light on the different side of this problem. If there were no rent control regulations, according to several housing analysts, it would quickly become an island occupied solely by middle class and rich people, thereby driving the lower class out of their homes and out of the city altogether. Another case study comments on the benefits of eliminating rent control. When rent control was terminated in Cambridge, property values increased by $2 billion. This could be attributed to the fact that during rent control, tenants are saving money and normally would have gone to landlords, but once it is eliminated, that money goes back to landlords. A better market for houses also emerges because landlords were more likely to put time and money into renovating their properties because they were not losing profits when they had rent-controlled tenants living in them. Rent control has always been a highly debated issue with people on both sides of the fence. Many call for increases in wages rather than an increase in housing expenses, while others say it is mandatory that people from all socioeconomic levels can find places to rent.
Price floors are used by the government to prevent prices from being too low. However, they can only be effective if they are set above the equilibrium price. A modern-day example is the issue of minimum wage. Minimum wage laws set legal minimums for the hourly wages paid to a certain group of workers. Recently, in 4 different states, Alaska, Arkansas, Nebraska, and South Dakota, all approved minimum wage increases through ballot measures in the 2014 election. The federal minimum is $7.25. These 4 states, however, have raised their prices to an average of $9.50. For somebody who works a 40-hour week and earns a minimum wage of $7.25, setting the rate at $9 would increase his or her annual salary from $15,000 to $18,000, which would be enough to push the person's work income above the poverty threshold for a family of 3. An article in the New Yorker describes some of the effects that come with raising the minimum wage. When the minimum wage goes up, many firms that employ low-wage workers simply pass on the higher costs to the customers in higher prices. Since many of their competitors face an identical rise in costs, they don't necessarily lose any business. Other firms work their employees harder or give them more training to increase their productivity. Minimum wages can help the cause of equity by ensuring the workers, particularly low-wage workers, have enough to live on. But if raising the minimum wage lowers employment and ends up excluding low-wage workers from employment prospects, it may have adverse effects on both welfare and efficiency. Raising the minimum wage is a polarizing issue. One side worries that raising it will lower employment. The other side downplays the impact on employment and plays up the positive impact on the living standards of the poor. Effects of price floors. There can be the possibility of a surplus in the example of the minimum wage when the wage is raised. More people are going to be looking for jobs, creating an excess of employees but a shortage of jobs available.